Sound, faint crackle of old film. A low hum builds beneath the hiss of static. The faint rhythm of boots on wet cobblestone echoes in the distance. Narrator soft, measured, reflective. It began on a morning the maps did not recognize. Visual, black and white footage of fog rolling over ruined rooftops. The convoy had been ordered east, following the last trail of smoke beyond the River Sar. But what they found wasn't on any chart, not in the Allied command's documents, not even in the German archives we've since recovered. It was a place that by every record of war and geography should not have existed. Sound the slow rumble of truck engines, muffled by fog. A dog barks faintly, then silence. The soldiers thought it was another abandoned town, one more scar left behind by retreating forces. The kind of place where windows watched you like eyes, and the wind carried secrets through. The hollow bones of houses, but the closer they drove, the quieter it became. Radios lost their signal. Compasses spun without reason. And the air? It carried the strange, heavy scent of ash and wet stone. Visual, grainy footage of helmets glinting in soft rain. Smoke coils upward from chimneys that shouldn't be burning. They called it Stadt der Nebel, the town of mist. Officially, it never appeared in any after-action report. Unofficially, the men who were there spoke of it only once, if they spoke of it at all. Sound, soft, static, morphing into the murmur of rain. Narrator. Private Harold Jensen of the 94th Infantry later described it in a letter that was never sent. Home, we drove into a silence I could feel pressing against my ears. The fog wasn't weathered, it was something else. Like the air was holding its breath. Visual, slow pan through an empty main. Street bicycles left leaning. Shop signs half torn away. A clock frozen at 11:17. What the Americans discovered. That morning was not a town liberated, nor one destroyed. It was something in between, paused, untouched by time. Standing still in the smoke of a war that had already moved past it. Sound. Distant church bell tolling once, then echoing away. And, yet, someone had lit the fires. Someone had drawn fresh water from the well. And somewhere beyond the fog a piano was playing soft, deliberate, and impossibly clear. Visual, slow zoom on an open doorway where light flickers faintly inside. In the war's endless chaos, where entire cities could vanish overnight. This small, forgotten place had somehow hidden itself from both sides. The men didn't know it then, but by stepping into that town, they were stepping into one of World War II's most unsettling mysteries. A place that wasn't supposed to be there at all. Fade to black. The sound of boots halts. Silence. Sound. Soft hiss of wind through broken glass. The distant creak of wooden doors swinging in the fog. Narrator low, reflective. They entered the town in a single column. Rifles at the ready. Boots sinking into the damp earth. It was mid-March 1945, just weeks before the war's ended. Europe by then. The American soldiers had seen nearly everything that could scar a man's memory. But nothing like this. Visual. Black and white footage of men moving cautiously through empty streets, mist curling around their legs. Corporal Matthews, who led the second squad, recalled later in a recorded interview, there was no movement. Civilians, no livestock, just smoke. In the strangest part, no smell of death. Usually you could smell it before you saw it, but here, there was nothing. It was clean, too clean. They split into pairs, clearing one building at a time. In the bakery, the dough was still resting on the counter, as if someone had stepped out for a moment and never returned. A pot of coffee sat cooling beside it. In the post office, mailbags were sealed and stamped, but every envelope was addressed to the same name. Sound. Faint paper rustling, the soft clink of metal buttons brushing against wood. Every address, every letter, one name, Anna Keller. Narrator. To this day, no record of an Anna Keller exists in German census or wartime registries. No grave, no birth certificate, no family trace. Only her name, written hundreds of times by different hands. Visual close-up of faded letters scattered on a desk. Ink, blurred by moisture. Narrator quietly. It was as though an entire town had written to a ghost. The platoon pressed further in, past the church square. The chapel doors were open, candles burned down to wax puddles, their smoke still fresh. Sergeant Lowell found the organ still warm to the touch, and on the altar, someone had placed a single American helmet. Sound. Soft hum of organ pipes. Faint echo of a hymn played off-key. Inside one of the houses, a phonograph played a German lullaby on repeat. The record was cracked, yet it spun endlessly, powered by a generator that shouldn't have been running. The men followed the cable down to a cellar end, found it connected to nothing. Visual handheld footage of soldiers descending stairs with flashlights, dust swirling in the beams. That was when they began hearing it. Footsteps slight, just beyond the fog. Not German, not Allied. The sound of movement that always stayed a few paces away, like the town itself was aware of their presence. Private Jensen, whose letter was found years later among declassified archives, wrote, It felt like we were walking through someone's memory. Everything was in place, but no one was home. Narrator: military command refused to acknowledge the discovery. When the squad reported the town's coordinates, the radio operator replied with confusion. There was no such grid reference. According to Allied maps, that area was empty forestland, sound, distant static, faint Allied transmission fading in and out. The next morning, when reinforcements arrived, there was nothing left. No streets, no buildings, just mist rising over scorched soil. The coordinates now pointed to open ground, flat and lifeless. Visual aerial footage of barren terrain. Overlaid map showing blank space where the town should have been. Narrator softly: of the 13 soldiers who entered that town, only 7 returned. The others were listed as MIA, missing in action, with no trace ever recovered. But among the survivors, every man described the same thing: the sound of that piano in the fog, and the feeling that someone had watched them leave. The sound, faint piano melody, slow and haunting, echoing through static. For decades, historians debated whether it was a case of battlefield disorientation, or perhaps a temporary hallucination brought on by exhaustion and chemical exposure. But the recovered film footage from one of the soldiers, cameras now preserved in the U.S. National Archives, shows something different. Visual, flickering film reel, a shot of empty streets, then suddenly a single light in an upper window. A figure moves behind the curtain. Frame by frame, a silhouette can be seen standing motionless at the window, watching the men leave. And then, nothing. Sound. Projector flickers to a stop. Silence. Narrator: some researchers later found that before the war, an entire German village near the Saar River was evacuated after a munitions explosion. The town's remains were buried under rubble, its name erased from official records. Locals called it the drowned place. It was never rebuilt. And yet in March 1945, American soldiers walked into its streets. Visual overlay of wartime maps. Fading into mist, the lines dissolving into gray. Whatever the truth was, it vanished with the fog that morning. Only the photographs, the letters, and the trembling voices of a few aging men remain, haunting echoes of a town that, by every account of history, should not have been there at all. Sound. A faint heartbeat blends with the low hum of wind. Sound. Soft film, static returning, faint ticking of a pocket watch. Narrator quietly, almost a whisper: today if you stand by the river Saar and look east toward the forest, there's nothing there, no road, no stones. No trace of the town the soldiers swore they entered. Only mist, rising from the valley floor. And on still mornings, locals say you can hear a faint melody drifting through the fog. A piano, playing somewhere beyond the trees. Visual, black and white aerial shot of fog rolling over open fields. The camera pans slowly downward. History leaves behind its ghosts. Some are written in names, carved on marble walls. Others are trapped between lost reels of film, in the static of forgotten broadcasts. The town that shouldn't have existed became one of those ghosts, a brief flicker in the war's vast darkness. Sound. Faint static merges with the low hum of wind. The piano fades. Narrator: perhaps it was a mirage born from trauma. Or perhaps, for one night, time itself opened a door and let them walk through someone else's memory. Visual, old film reel burns at the edge. Image dissolves to white. No one ever found Anna Keller. No one ever found the missing men. Only their stories whispered, uncertain, and quietly fading like the end of a dream. Sound, distant thunder. Radio, static, flickers, then silence. Narrator: final line. Fading. This is not a story of victory or defeat. It's a story of a place that existed only long enough to be remembered, and then lost again. Fade to black. Closing parenthesis. Visual, recovered from U.S. War Archives footage dated March 1945, appears briefly, then vanishes. Sound, final click of a film reel stopping.